No one needs to know what you're doing for you to become extraordinary, and the moment you realize that is when you step out of the noise, the place where words drown out actions, where people are compelled to share, to be seen, to catch someone's attention just to feel like they exist. But everything that truly holds value in this life does not need to be announced. A sturdy tree does not need to speak to prove its deep roots. A mountain does not need to rise up to be seen. And a person who is truly changing does not need to tell anyone. They just need to keep going. You don't need to announce your plans. You don't need to write down your goals and post them online as a way of asking others to keep you accountable, because the only reminder you truly need is yourself. Silence is fertile ground where all focus takes root. When you no longer feel the need to explain, you reserve your energy for something more important: doing. Doing consistently. Doing without waiting for feedback. Doing without the pressure to impress. That's when you are truly living for what you believe in, not for how others perceive you. This world is too loud. People talk about things they haven't done. They teach others how to live while they themselves are still stuck. They paint beautiful goals as a performance, but they're hollow inside. And in a world tangled between wanting to be known and wanting to be truly good, the quiet ones become the most dangerous, because you can't measure where they are. You can't see how far they've progressed. You won't know when they'll surpass you until it's already too late. True strength makes no noise. It doesn't have to, because the only echo it creates is results. And results cannot be denied. You can't underestimate someone who is completely transformed without ever announcing it. You can't mock someone who has lived exactly as they once silently committed. And you can't judge a process you've never witnessed because it happened beyond your line of sight. That is the power of silence. You don't need to prove anything. Any attempt to explain or persuade others to believe in your path is an energy leak. Those who have never walked the journey you're on will never understand the choices you're making. So why explain? Why announce? Why give them the chance to interfere? Guard your silence like a protective shield, where no one can touch your focus. Because once you begin sharing too early, you lose your freedom. You start living under the expectations of others. You begin adjusting your pace, your direction, even your goals, not according to what you want, but according to what you think others will admire. Those who are truly strong don't try to be seen. They don't need someone to check their progress. They don't need applause to maintain motivation. They don't need a stage to showcase every step. What they need is a reason rooted deep inside, a commitment strong enough and a spirit steady enough that nothing can knock them off course. And strangely, because they're not trying to be seen, they end up being noticed. In another way, their transformation doesn't come through words. It radiates through their eyes, their tone of voice, the way they move. No longer rushed, no longer needing to prove, no longer chasing validation. They walk as if to say, I know what I'm doing, and I don't need you to understand it. Each day you choose silence to work is a day you lay another brick in the foundation of a new identity. An identity that needs no audience, no favorable conditions, no promise of success, only progress, bit by bit. And each time you silently pass through a challenge, you're sending a clear signal to your brain: I'm serious. I don't delay. I don't live to be cheered. I live to finish. Silence helps you go further because you're not slowed down by outside reactions. You don't waste time responding to comments. You don't have to correct misunderstandings. You don't need to reassure anyone about why you're doing this instead of that. You just need to do. And that just doing, repeated over time, will turn you into someone impossible to ignore. Not because you shouted, but because your results are too big to be overlooked. People will ask, how did you do it? But you won't need to answer. They'll see it clearly. They'll see it in the way you live, in what you've built, in what you've managed to keep intact through silence instead of losing it through performance. You won't have to say, I tried. You'll just smile. because you'll know you've been trying all along while they were still busy talking. Don't let your silence be mistaken for inaction. In truth, it is the strongest evidence that you're acting with full seriousness. No announcement needed, no post, no explanation. Guard your process like something sacred. No one has the right to touch it, except you. And remember, what you build in silence is the only thing no one can break, because no one knows where you started, what you've gone through, or what you've sacrificed. So no one has the right to define your success. True victory doesn't lie in being seen. It lies in not needing to be seen and still continuing, and when the results appear, clear, undeniable, unquestionable, you won't need to say a single word. Silence will be the most powerful declaration you've ever made. It's time you face the truth. You are the only one delaying the life you know you deserve. Not because you're not capable, not because you lack opportunity, but because you're still talking too much, explaining too much, daydreaming too much, instead of living seriously and acting with discipline. Every time you tell someone about a future plan, you haven't truly started. You drain a portion of your inner strength, because words without action are nothing more than a sedative. They make you feel as if you're moving forward when in reality you're still standing still. There's a very fine line between preparing and procrastinating. You call your delays thoughtful consideration. You call your inaction a wait for the right moment. But the truth is, every excuse sounds reasonable if you repeat it long enough. But action requires no justification. It only requires a decision. And if you're truly serious about your life, you'll stop talking. No more explaining, no more reasoning, no more debating ideals. You'll get up and begin. The world doesn't care what you're thinking. It only responds to what you do. You may have a grand vision, a powerful dream, noble ideals, but if you don't translate them into concrete actions each day, they're nothing more than a forgotten blueprint. You cannot build a future with words. You can only build it with commitment. And that commitment doesn't need to be declared to the world. It needs to be etched into every morning you wake up, into every choice you make to do what's right instead of what's easy, into every moment you stay disciplined even when no one is watching. Don't let your words create pressure you're not yet ready to live up to. Every time you announce something you haven't truly committed to, you put yourself in a tough position. Either you're forced to follow through just to save face, or you end up living in guilt for not following through. Both weaken you because you're acting for others, not for yourself. Taking yourself seriously means doing the right thing without needing to say it. It means needing no audience, no verification, no reminders. It means being mature enough to manage your own life, not out of fear of failure, but because you genuinely want to go far. Maturity begins when you stop talking and start doing, when you stop convincing others that you're trying and truly focus on progress, even if it's slow but real, when you stop seeking approval and start producing undeniable evidence. Action is the only language life listens to, and you will receive exactly the frequency you emit. If you act half-heartedly, the results will come randomly. If you act seriously, consistently, deeply, life will respond with equal depth. You can continue living in the endless cycle of almost starting, almost changing, almost committing. But then a year passes, then 3, then a decade, and you're still there with the same unfulfilled dream. Not because you lacked time, but because you kept talking too much and doing too little. And the painful truth is, no one blames you, because this world doesn't need you to succeed. It simply watches and responds to how you live. Waste your time and it will take away opportunities. Live seriously day by day, and it will open paths you never expected. You don't need to do anything loud to show you're serious. You just need to live with intention. Cut out what's unnecessary. Remove relationships that only hold you back. Clean up time leaks spent on meaningless things. Organize each hour of your day as if it were the last asset you had. Because in reality, time is the only thing you can't buy back. And how you use it will show how much you respect yourself. Seriousness isn't a stern face or bold speeches. It's consistent action when no one is watching. It's the habits you maintain even when you're tired. It's the integrity you uphold even in the smallest decisions. It's when you no longer ask, should I do this? But instead ask, how can I do it better every day? When you start living by that standard, you won't need to say a word, but everyone will recognize that you've changed. Stopping the talk doesn't mean disconnecting from the world. It's how you reconnect more deeply with yourself. When you no longer worry about performing, you'll hear what you truly need. When you no longer seek approval, you'll begin living by your own values, and that silence will become the foundation for every breakthrough you've been waiting for. Your journey doesn't begin with a post, a story, or a public declaration. It begins inside, when you stop saying you will change and quietly begin to change. You don't need the world's applause. You need a reason stronger than excuses, a decision clearer than inspiration, a system of action more defined than wall-mounted goals. And you need to begin even when you can't yet see the light at the end, because what you're looking for isn't waiting at the finish line. It's being shaped in each step you choose every day, in silence, in seriousness, in a commitment that requires no audience. When you stop talking and truly begin, you're not just changing your life, you're changing who you are. And nothing is more powerful than that. The truth is, no one remembers what you said, they only remember what you did. In a world where everyone wants to impress, those who focus on genuine progress stand out in a different way, with no gimmicks, no spotlight, no need to proclaim anything. They let their actions speak for themselves. And what makes them special isn't their words, it's the undeniable results. You don't need to impress anyone. What you need is to wake up each day and become a little better than the version of yourself from yesterday. Every time you choose action over display, you're building an identity that's not easily shaken. Don't seek recognition from others when you haven't truly made progress. Because being impressive doesn't make you better, doesn't take you further. It only satisfies the ego in a fleeting moment, but leaves a long gap in your actual capability. Every time you post about what you're doing before it's truly formed, you're siphoning away the energy meant for action and turning it into performance. Early validation, if it's not rooted in substance, becomes a borrowed coat, making you believe you're already good enough to stop. But progress doesn't come from illusion. It comes from repeating the right things in the right environment with humility and tireless consistency. Those who truly transform often remain silent for a long time before being noticed. They don't post every step online. They don't need to document every workout, every book, every new habit. They simply act every day without needing to be watched. Trying to impress is an outward-setted act. Real progress is an inward journey. If you live to create an effect, you'll be controlled by others' reactions. Every compliment will make you complacent. Every criticism will shake you. And you'll forever be dependent on what others think instead of focusing on what you truly need to do. You're not here to become a version that seems good in the eyes of others. You're here to genuinely change your life. And that requires the courage to stay unnoticed for a while so you can progress with strength. Look at your daily habits. They don't need to be flashy, they just need to be right. 1 hour of deep work doesn't need to be posted on social media. One consistent workout doesn't need praise. One good habit repeated in silence is worth more than 10 posts saying, "I'm starting." Someone who seeks to impress may attract attention for a short time, but someone who truly progresses will cause others to change how they see you for a long time, maybe forever. Because results don't lie. They last longer than any form of promotion. When you truly make progress, you don't need to announce it. People will see it through how you respond to difficulty, through how you stay calm when everything is chaotic, through how you choose what's right when no one is watching. These things cannot be faked. You cannot impress with steadiness if you're hollow inside. Only consistent action creates true steadiness. Only repeated commitment every day creates real depth. If you're still trying to make others see, ask yourself, is that actually making you better or just keeping you busy building an image? Image won't hold you together when you feel weak. Image won't keep you standing when failure hits. Image won't make you persist when no one is cheering. Only real capability, forged in silence, is a strong enough foundation for the long road. What you need isn't others looking at you with admiration. It's being able to look at yourself in the mirror every morning and clearly see, I'm rising, not for anyone else, but for myself. True progress comes from the simple things, repeated. Waking up a little earlier, focusing a little longer, reading a little deeper, reacting a little slower, resting at the right time, and quietly improving every small part of your life, bit by bit each day, without needing to show it off. Because that silent consistency is what creates unstoppable breakthroughs. Others won't realize you're changing until you've already become someone else. And at that point, you won't need to impress anyone anymore, because you won't need to. Your results, your presence, your consistency will be the undeniable proof. People will ask, how did you do it? And you won't need to answer, because your progress is the answer. And that is the most powerful persuasion. Not a good speech, not a beautiful image, but a real process, a real transformation, a life lived seriously, intentionally, with no need for permission from anyone. Discipline needs no announcement. It doesn't need to be witnessed, doesn't need validation. It only needs you, each day, once more, to choose what is right, even when no one is watching, no one is praising, and no immediate reward is given. Discipline is the foundation of all sustainable progress. And when you forge it in silence, each step you take becomes so steady that nothing can break it. Because repeated action without applause is the clearest proof that you've escaped the trap of impulse. Many people begin with excitement. They map out goals, create detailed plans, and publicly share them to feel accountable. But when no one pays attention, when the excitement fades, when the encouragement disappears, they stop. They call it a lack of motivation. But the truth is, they never had discipline. Discipline doesn't depend on emotion. It's a commitment to what's right, regardless of how you feel. Discipline is working even when you're not inspired. It's continuing in silence, even when nothing seems to happen. It's understanding that progress doesn't always arrive with a bang, but often comes through steady, quiet. A disciplined person doesn't need reminders. They have systems. They build schedules not to feel restricted, but to free themselves from chaos. They don't work when they have time, they make time to work. They don't have to say, I'm trying, because every action, every choice in their day already says it for them. And because they don't show off, their change has depth. Anything built in silence has deeper roots than what's built just to attract attention. No one sees you setting your alarm 30 minutes earlier each day. No one knows you turned off your phone to do 2 hours of deep work. No one is aware you read a few more pages each night, that you sat quietly with yourself instead of getting swept into meaningless conversations. But all of these things, repeated, are exactly what will define you later. A powerful version of yourself is not born from excitement, but grows from discipline. Each small, consistent action in silence is a brick of transformation. If you're looking for a turning point, start with the simplest actions. No revolution needed. Just don't quit today. Just return to your desk for 30 more minutes. Just finish that small promise you made to yourself. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, even if no one knows, you reinforce one thing. I am trustworthy. And that is the foundation of all inner strength. Those without discipline must rely on inspiration. Those with discipline live by principles. And principles, when trained in silence, become the compass that guides you through every stage of life. Think back to the times you were disappointed in yourself, not because you lacked ability, but because you made promises and didn't act. You meant to change, but let your emotions lead. You set goals, but let invitations, conversations, or a phone pull you off track. That's when you realized the lack of discipline is the most expensive cost you're paying, not with money, but with time, self-respect, and your unfulfilled potential. A disciplined person doesn't ask, how do I stay motivated? They ask, what must I complete today, no matter how I feel? They don't search for easier ways. They search for the right ways. They know that inspiration is a guest, but discipline is a foundation, and a strong foundation can support even your worst days. In moments when you want to do nothing, discipline will lift you up, place you back where you belong, and whisper, do it, because you chose this. It's not a threat, that's a reminder from the very person you're trying to become. You don't need to be the best today. You just need not to quit today. You don't need to win every race, you just need to keep moving each day one step. And if you can maintain that in silence, with no need to prove, no need for praise, you've already surpassed most people. Not because you're luckier, but because you're more consistent. Because you don't wait for perfect conditions. Because you don't stop when you lack inspiration. And because you believe progress doesn't lie in speed, but in deliberate repetition. Each day is a test, not a test of ability, but of commitment. Everyone has weak moments, but the disciplined don't let weakness dictate their actions. They chose this path, and they continue, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. And one day, when others look back, they won't understand how you did it, but you will. You were steady when no one was watching. You kept going when no one was cheering, and you built an entire solid life from steps no one saw. That's a victory no one can take from you. True results don't require you to make announcements. They carry enough power to speak on their own. When you truly change, you don't need to declare that you're on a self-development journey. Your presence will communicate that naturally. Through how you speak less but say the right things, through how you walk not in haste but with steadiness, through how you don't argue but always hold command in conversation. You don't need to say you're living differently, because each daily action already proves it more clearly than any words could. Those who frequently announce their results are often still doubting themselves. They need external validation to reinforce their inner self, but that is never sustainable. Because once you rely on praise, you'll also be controlled by criticism. And so you'll live in response to others, not from the strength of your own character. On the other hand, those who move forward in silence build a kind of self-respect that is not easily shaken. They don't need to explain the path they're on, because when the results arrive, they will be the most complete answer. When you work in silence long enough, the day will come when you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. A healthy body will show you've been training. A clear gaze and inner presence will reveal you've been reading, learning, living with depth. A principled lifestyle will earn others' trust without you having to preach about your commitment. Results can't be faked. They don't depend on presentation skills or media support. They only require one thing: repeated action with purpose, with discipline, and continual silent evolution. You don't need to post your achievements, you just need to create real ones. The truth is, most things you share too early will generate pressure that can steer you off course. Because once you begin acting for the sake of being seen, you lose your internal leadership. And you fall into the trap of performance, always needing an audience, always needing reactions, always needing to be seen in order to continue. But those who achieve lasting results understand one thing: the more important something is, the more it should be kept private, at least until it's too big to be ignored. You don't need to say that you're changing, you just need to change. You don't need to explain why you've become more silent, why you're declining more invitations, why you're more selective with relationships. Those who understand will see. Those who don't need an explanation. And once the results come, your silence will become the loudest voice in the room. No shouting needed, no persuasion required. Just your presence and what you've built will do the rest. Results are also the strongest shield against judgment. People may question your words, but they can't deny the reality of what you've built. Clearly, solidly. No one can look down on you when standing before living proof. No confrontation needed. No rebuttal required. You just need to keep walking, and every criticism will fade into silence, because once results appear, they make all arguments irrelevant. The less you speak, the more your actions are respected, because observers don't just hear what you say, they feel what you consistently do. And consistency, once proven over time, needs no words to defend it. Those who build in silence are often incredibly patient. They're not in a rush to succeed. They don't need to validate every step. They simply keep doing what's right, repeating what's right, and let the results arrive in their own time. True maturity is when you no longer need others to know what you're doing. You understand that life doesn't reward words, it only rewards those who don't give up. And every time you choose not to announce, you preserve energy for what matters most. Continuing. You don't need to post to feel like you're progressing, you just need to progress. No one needs to know what you did today except you, and if you can do the right thing without being seen, then you've truly gained control of yourself. Success doesn't come from noise, it comes from perseverance no one sees. When the results show up, others will think you made rapid progress, but you know the truth, you were just silent long enough. You worked hard in the shadows, you labored without applause, and you chose the harder path. Not the one that made you visible, but the one that got the job done. When you've stayed silent long enough to accumulate true strength, you won't need to shout to assert yourself. Your steps, your posture, your achievements, they will all speak. In the end, you don't need to prove anything to anyone, because you're not building this life to be applauded, you're building it to live right. And when what you've built is strong enough, it will become a story that needs no telling. People will see it without explanation. They will believe without persuasion, because you don't need to say you've done it. You have done it. And the real always finds a way to reveal itself. No miracles needed, no media, no report cards, just time. And time always favors those who act in silence. There is no one right path to success for everyone. What makes you strong is not the speed at which you achieve something, but the steadiness in the rhythm you've chosen and your loyalty to it. Even when the whole world is rushing to the beat of a louder, more chaotic drum. You don't need to keep up with anyone. You weren't born to race others. You were born to explore, to honor, and to protect your own unique process. And sometimes that means you'll have to move slower, go deeper, and walk more quietly, but also more sustainably than anyone who hurries down a path just to impress. Not all achievements come from speed. Many solid things in life are created through patience. Just like roots grow deep into the earth before a tree breaks the surface. The early steps in your journey might be invisible to others. No one may understand why you're not rushing, why you decline flashy opportunities, why you choose silence over noise. But you don't need them to understand. You only need to understand that walking the right path at your own rhythm is far better than running quickly on a road that doesn't belong to you. Everyone blooms at a different time, but society makes you believe you're falling behind if you haven't reached certain milestones by a certain age. You see others being recognized, successful, famous, and you start to doubt yourself. But you forget, no one is living a life identical to yours. No one carries the exact combination of experiences, memories, values, beliefs, and goals that you do. So why would you live as if you must follow their timeline? Believing in your own rhythm is a form of courage, because it demands that you accept silence. Accept not being applauded. Accept not being understood for months or even years. But in return, you gain something no one else can give you: inner freedom, a peace that comes from not being pulled by other people's opinions. You're no longer chasing approval. You're simply living, not performing. And that creates a special kind of presence, a presence born of quiet, deep consistency. You don't need to show up everywhere. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to share too soon what you're building. Let your own rhythm guide you, step by step, quietly, intentionally. Everyone has a season of blooming, and no one blooms all year round. If you're in the rooting phase, don't be impatient. Don't let comparison pull you away from your own process. That quiet phase, where there's nothing new to share, nothing exciting to post, is exactly when you're building true inner power. Some people succeed early, but lose it just as quickly, because they haven't developed the depth to sustain what they've achieved. But if you're moving slowly and steadily, if you choose what's right over what's fast, if you stay loyal to your values instead of chasing trends, then you're building a foundation no one can shake. Once you understand your own rhythm, you don't need to beat anyone. You only need to beat who you were yesterday. And if today you walk with full presence, full awareness, full effort, then you're already ahead in the only race worth running, the race with yourself. Learn to respect the quiet. There's no need to rush to prove anything. No need to worry because you're not as far along as someone else. What truly matters in life doesn't come from being as good as someone. It comes from whether you are living in alignment with what you believe in, what you desire, and what you've chosen. Your rhythm is one of a kind. And when you can maintain it regardless of the world's chaos, you've done something few can do. You've become unshakable in the midst of change. Not because you resist everything, but because you know what truly matters and you won't lose it to the fleeting opinions of others. You don't need to explain why you haven't succeeded as early as others. You just need to keep going, one step at a time. Maybe it won't be loud, maybe it won't sparkle, but it will be solid. Stay loyal to your process, even if no one applauds. Focus on your own footsteps, not the sound of someone else's shoes. Because when you're too busy listening to others' pace, you lose track of your own path without even realizing it. Focus is your greatest asset, and it only survives when you stay true to your own rhythm. No one has the right to decide how far you should go or how fast. Only you, the one showing up every day, paying the price through patience and discipline, have that right. And if you just keep going quietly, moving forward in the way you trust, you'll witness something miraculous. You won't need to impress anyone. You won't need to chase anyone, because you'll become someone who simply cannot be left behind because you never stepped off your own track. Focus is not a skill, it's a choice to tune out what doesn't matter in order to protect what truly does. The world outside never stops making noise, judgments, comparisons, suggestions, temptations. If you're not clear enough about what you're pursuing, those noises will quickly drown out your inner clarity. And then you'll stray from the path you've chosen, not because it was wrong, but because you listened too much to things that had nothing to do with your destination. No one can go far if they keep stopping to respond to every comment. Maturity begins when you realize not everything said deserves your attention. Not every piece of advice needs a response. Not everything that draws attention deserves yours. When you let others pull you into debates, into doubt, into advice they themselves never follow, you're giving up the most valuable thing you have, focus. And when focus is lost, your actions become shallow, your reactions become emotional, and you end up living in a mess you didn't. You don't need to respond to every criticism. You don't need to explain every choice. You don't need to convince anyone that you're on the right path. You only need to continue. Long-term consistency will silence all doubt. Sustainable results will be the most solid answer. Others may not believe in you now, but if you stay focused and work it through, eventually they'll have no choice but to acknowledge you. No need to shout, no need to justify. You only need to show the world that you're undistracted and you haven't stopped. Staying focused is also a way to conserve energy. You can't create, can't make good decisions, can't do deep work if you're constantly interrupted by things unrelated to your journey. Every time you care about what others say about you, you give away a piece of your precious energy. And then you no longer have the strength to do what truly matters. Successful people aren't those who juggle the most, but those who eliminate the most so they can do one thing well and see it through. Noise doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it comes from within. Unnecessary worries, useless comparisons, questions that make you hesitate instead of act. To maintain focus, you must learn to quiet down. Learn to sit and have an honest conversation with yourself. What do I want? Where am I going? What do I need most right now? Everything else, no matter how tempting, is secondary if it takes you away from that honest answer. The more you return to your inner clarity, the less shaken you'll be by external chaos. No one is responsible for understanding you. They might laugh when you go quiet. They might question you when you decline games you've outgrown. They might criticize you when you're no longer easygoing as before. But that's not your concern. You're not living to fit into someone else's perception. You're living to fulfill what you believe is right. And if the noise makes you forget why you started, then the first thing you need to do is turn it off. No negotiation, no hesitation. The less distracted you are, the deeper you become. The less you care about impressing, the more you can actually influence. Focus is the shortest path to results. And because of that, distractions often show up as sweet temptations, but they're hollow. Tempting invitations that don't align. Opportunities that look big but lack real value. Conversations that make you feel important but don't help you grow. Every time you say no to something unrelated to your goal, you're taking one more step into peak focus. Don't measure yourself by the noise. Don't let view counts, likes, or comments determine whether you're on the right track. Let your standards come from within. You know when you're doing deep work. You know what's meaningful versus what's just keeping you busy. You know what moves you forward and what simply drains your energy without bringing you closer to your goal. And if you already know, don't let the noise decide for you. You don't need to chase anyone. You don't need to answer everything. You don't need to show up everywhere. You only need to be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. That's the foundation of true focus. And that very focus, if sustained long enough, will help you create something the world can't ignore. Not because you tried to be seen, but because your results are too clear to overlook. And when others ask, how did you manage to do all this without anyone noticing? You'll smile. Because while they were still making noise, you quietly finished the work. Not everyone needs to know what you had to endure to get to where you are today. True growth happens in silence, in the unnoticed moments, in the internal battles no one sees, in the times when you almost collapsed but chose to keep going without a single complaint. Strength is not something you display. It's something you quietly forge when no one is standing beside you, when all words of encouragement fall silent, and all you're left with is yourself and one choice. Move forward or give up. You don't need an audience to prove your strength. You just need enough honesty to acknowledge your pain, enough clarity not to let it consume you, and enough resolve to rise without expecting anyone to offer a hand, because the truth is, no one fully understands what you're carrying. No one can bear the sleepless nights for you, the tough decisions, the moments when you silently ask yourself if you can keep going. So if you're still standing, even when no one knows, you're stronger than you think. Getting through hardship alone is not something to pity. It is a privilege reserved for those willing to face themselves. When you stop waiting to be rescued, you activate the strongest part within you. When you stop venting, stop seeking sympathy from others, you begin listening more deeply, inward. And in that silence, you will find something no one else can give you: self-respect. A kind of self-respect that doesn't come from praise, but from the fact that you didn't give in. Hard times strip away pretense. You'll clearly see which relationships only existed during ease. You'll recognize what you relied on too heavily. And you'll understand that, in the moments when no one is watching, you have the right to choose the identity you'll carry going forward. People often think suffering makes you weaker, but in truth, it offers a choice. Either you avoid it, or you rebuild yourself from the inside out. And when you choose the second, without telling anyone, you're laying the foundation for an inner strength that no one can take away. There won't always be someone who shows up at the right time. Not everyone can understand the emotions you keep hidden. And that's why you must learn to lift yourself, not to prove anything, not to be a hero, but to truly survive, so that you won't need to rely on someone else just to keep moving, so that every time you overcome something, you owe thanks to no one but yourself. And when you've gathered enough silent victories, you'll begin to live with a calmness others won't understand. They'll think you're cold. But what they don't know is you've walked through fire alone and survived. Getting through pain on your own doesn't mean you must suffer forever, but you do need to go through it at least once to know what it feels like to no longer run. No venting, no acting, no pretending to be okay, just facing it. And then you'll see the pain isn't as massive as you thought. It only grows when you try to avoid it. But when you allow yourself to move through it with awareness in silence, you'll realize it has no power over you. You are the one who decides who you will become on the other side of that pain. Inner strength doesn't come from always appearing fine. It comes from daring to admit when you're not, but refusing to let that weakness define you. You can sit in the dark for a while, but you're not allowed to build a home there. You can cry, be tired, want to give up, but then you must stand. No one needs to see it. No one needs to acknowledge it, because the most precious thing you gain is not someone else's gaze, but the one you give yourself, a look of respect, because you know you didn't quit. You don't need to explain. Don't need to write a long story to prove what you've been through. Just live differently. Live more deeply, more consciously, more courageously. Those who have made it through pain in silence don't need to act strong, because they have become so. No posturing, no need for credit. Their presence is enough for others to feel. A calmness not born of appearance, but of an interior that has been tempered by tears, by effort, by the repeated decision to continue when stopping would have been easier. Overcoming hardships alone doesn't mean